Yeah, the panel.
Please, no.
So we have CIOs from the Clark companies, which is Steve K, which is, I'm going to take the abbreviated way out here. Paula Long, who was at Ecologic Dell, now an entrepreneur with Data Gravity. Steve Snyder, who is the CIO, CTO at the Massachusetts Convention Authority. And Alan Wick-Franson, who's the VP of IT at Dartmouth. So quite a diversity of perspectives here. And they seem to have a lot of challenges. I mean, so far today we've talked about being in charge of innovation in addition to, let's see, security, compliance, business, consumer engagement, reduction in costs. So I think there's a whole lot of things that they're going to have as challenges to handle as they move forward. And they're going to talk about the role of the CIO and what that means now in terms of enterprise technology. So Adam, take it away.
Awesome. In the break, I was actually talking to Amal from Factor, is that right? And he was telling me that they have no infrastructure, zero infrastructure. I had asked him the question, how will large companies sort of move in the world? And he said they won't. They'll die. So I figured maybe we'll do something a little different, just have like a resume class. Just sort of working on our polish our resumes. No, I'm just kidding. No, but there's obviously a lot of change. We talked about it. Hopefully we'll get some insights. Take questions throughout. If you have any questions, feel free to interrupt us. First, we'll go through a quick round. We already did the intros. So the title of this was The New CIO. My first question is, what was wrong with the old CIO? And where do we go from here? So anyone first, and we'll pick on you if people don't. I'll volunteer.
Well, Adam, when I started about 9-10 years ago in the role I'm in right now, I was looking out 5 to 8 years. Now I'm looking out 18 months to 36 months, and on my feet to see what's going to percolate up. So it's radically different from what I was now.
So what was wrong with the old CIO?
Couldn't be flexible enough. So we had to become more flexible, listen to what the business needs were, and facilitate change instead of being an impediment. Or we were going to end up with a bunch of shadow IT, which we have some, but some of it's good. So.
I'll piggyback on that. I think the old CIOs often really focused on the technology and infrastructure and really not the services and the people who were using it. So, reflective of what we've been talking about this morning, we just told people what to do. And now we really need to be responsive to what they want to do rather than what we want them to do.
Why did we think that was okay back then to tell them what to do?
Because it was much more mysterious. And there weren't as many choices. There just weren't as many choices. And
we thought we knew what they needed, but we didn't.
I think that this consumerization of IT actually happened quite a long time ago, probably close to 10 years ago. And it might have been the first iPod or whatever came out. And I read this piece in the Computer World at the time that said, stop fighting this stuff. You need to embrace it, and you got to figure it out because it's gonna come. So I think that there is no more hiding per se. I mean, so much so that in our organization, about 6-7 years ago, we put the majority of the sort of the front-facing IT people sitting in the business. So they're not even sitting with me per se or the engineers and whoever else, but they're actually sitting and they're viewed as actually parts of the department. So much that except that I'm paying them, but they're an integral part of their team.
So knowing that things are changing quickly, have you started organizing differently? Have you started doing work differently than you used to?
Sure.
Yes.
I mean, it's sort of adapt or die. Yes.
That's one of Paul's answers. Yes, no, yes.
No. We have a video for you.
We have to take a break.
It'll be about 20 minutes. Just kidding, Paul.
As I talk to different CIOs, one of the things that people seem really hungry for is, all right, there's all this change, we're supposed to do things differently. How are you organizing your teams, your groups, to handle this level of change, to handle being more transparent, to be more responsive to your customers? Clearly, the way we were doing it before didn't work. And so I see a lot of questions out there. So maybe even just a quick round and sort of if you're doing anything innovative or interesting in how you're organizing and getting work done.
Well, I'm not a CIO, but I think people have changed what success looks like for the role. I think back 20 years ago, success looked like for the role, like you said, don't lose the data, keep the business apps, close the books within however much the SEC wants, and stay out of trouble. And so that was success probably 20 years ago. Now success is, keep your customer happy, your customers changed. It's not the CEO or the CFO, it's the entire organization. So I don't know that the old CIO was necessarily not responsive. His just view of what success was or what his criteria to be successful or hers was different. And I think now with the consumerization and the importance of staying current and active and using social media and other things have just changed the rules. And so you either adapt, as Amal said, or you die, right? And so we have to be careful because whatever success looks like is what people are going to gravitate to and drive push for the organization. Sorry, but.
Well, I think my role has been a little more political than it was in the past. I'm spending more time, instead of looking at infrastructure, meeting the business units, meeting the key players, the stakeholders, finding out what their needs are, but also fostering some young talent, some rising stars within the other departments that can start feeding IT ideas and become part of our leadership team on implementing new products or new projects. Because if the grassroots group has ownership, they take pride. I don't have to train the people because they become the subject matter experts on each one of the systems. And there's a lot of buy-in that this is a top-down initiative as well as a bottom-up initiative. So meeting with the business units and figuring out where their points of pain are and what we can do to help them has become a much bigger part of my business instead of meeting with vendors to figure out how much bandwidth I need to buy. Or, I let HR do more of the work that I used to do, interviewing folks, give me the final candidates, and we'll go from there. So that's where my focus is at.
Not so much organizational structure-wise, but I think the type of people that we're looking for is quite a bit different. So we're at the risk of offending people. We outsource some of the commodity services. They think we can just kind of buy anywhere, whether that be onshore or offshore. But the people that we are hiring, looking to deal with the business, have to be sort of highly interpersonal. Obviously, it's sort of big proponents of technology and consumer technology, and so they can kind of translate some of the stuff about, albeit how do I use my iPad with, getting access to this BI suite of tools or what have you. So I think it's just the type of person is a little bit different in IT than it maybe is traditionally been.
So that's come up a couple times that suddenly that IT now has to be personal, some weird noises, has to be more personal, and yet when we think about our sort of stereotypical image of the IT person, it's someone who's introverted and doesn't like light or something like that.
No pocket protector here.
And you're right.
Anyone?
But here's what do we do with many of us have staffs that are from a different world or think differently. What do we do to bring them along? Can we bring them along?
Some you can. It's adapt or die, and some you have to cut your losses. We've given you all the tools to move forward into the next generation or next iteration of IT. Either you do it or you don't. And you're in job.
Well, what are those tools that we give them to become more personal and more customer focused?
Well, there's softer skills training you can attempt to give, but some people aren't going to be able to make that transition.
Force them to start dating.
I just think it's about we need people that are quicker on their feet, can deal in an agile environment. So this is not your traditional logistics to customer delivery, that type of thing.
So Dartmouth has a long history of developing technology. So time sharing started.
He has more hair than I do somehow, though.
Basic started at Dartmouth. We developed an email system that we just closed down. We will close down this month. Blitz mail. Did you use Blitz?
No.
Okay. So Dartmouth's history was that we should build it, and if anyone else, we would always build it better than anybody else. And so it's been a real challenge to actually get us to say, what's good enough out there that we can actually select and choose from, rather than we don't have to build it ourselves. So that's been actually quite a change at Dartmouth. The other thing we do is we partner very closely with others who deliver services to faculty and students and staff. So we have discipline-based teams that work with faculty. So the library has their specialists, and we have our specialists. The media production group have their specialists. So we actually go out to the departments more than once a year. We go out to the departments quite frequently. So it's very much a focus on what are the faculty, the students, and the staff trying to do, rather than what is it we think they ought to be doing. And we have some real hits on, and we have some misses.
I just have one thing. I was having a conversation, I'm sorry, terrible with names, but you and I were having a conversation in the back about sort of staffing and sort of even retention, even attracting talent. It was because it was such a tremendous challenge for, at least for my organization, just given the amount of retailers in the area. We've had to get, you have to start getting really creative about attracting talent and actually keeping them. So, flexible work schedules, et cetera, and then also, speaking of innovation, giving them time to work on new technologies, because that's what they want to do. They want to work with Yammer or whatever it is. That's a shameless plug, but that works okay for you. So it's just sort of, you have to be, some of the old school kind of management techniques have kind of gone out the window as well, in order to keep people engaged and enthused about what they're doing, and keeping them motivated and keeping them delivering.
That's a great point. So as a manager of IT or any part of your organization, how does that change the leadership role? How does it change the way you interface with the rest of the company, but also manage your employees?
Well, I think you need to give them more ownership. If they take ownership and realize that they're being held accountable to meet a set of deliverables or standards, and it's different than the waterfall type, cascading type of software development cycle. We have scrums every day. We have people that have to deliver code, and we have to build twice a week. We don't build twice a day, but we build twice a week. They have to meet those goals and objectives, and that's how they're measured from a performance standpoint. But the organization has shifted fundamentally too. We're in a much faster development cycle. We develop first for the mobile platform now, and then we add into the desktop. If there's a big enough need for a desktop or iteration of a build, we'll deploy it to the desktop. But that's not the norm, and all of our desktop apps are all web-based. So I mean, really, it's a different environment. Demands a much faster response from the end user, and much more collaboration. So they can't go into their cubicle and hide for a week and not be productive. They literally have to produce every couple of days. So.
Actually, let me ask this question, try to challenge everybody here. Rewind back 4 or 5 years. What assumptions that you made then turned out not to be true today?
That the Red Sox would play better.
Was there anything you thought in 2007, say, about what the future would be like that turned out not to be true? It's too hard a question. Anybody in the audience who wants to take a stab at that one?
I didn't think BlackBerry would crater as fast. I mean, I really didn't. They had so much market share that I just saw it going in perpetuity. But then, a better platform, or a platform that people would embrace. iPhone ran right by.
I think mobile, I think the advent of mobile and its uptake was just not on the horizon. It was where tablets didn't exist. The notion that we'd have to be, to hear one of the people say you need a desktop person, for the mobile person, the enterprise, I mean, that just was not on the table.
I didn't think texting would overshadow email, for example, or phone calls.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that Apple in the corporate environment wasn't really seen, and we're not a corporate environment, and most of our students use Apples, but it's really something that we have to really work with now within our administrative side of the house as well.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy how much how much things have changed in that time. How does that change? Oh wait, one more.
CMM. I don't know where CMM is, level 3, level 5. I think discipline is critical, but I think some companies, including a company I was at, sort of over-engineered it and over-implemented it, and actually worked against some of the things we're talking about achieving now that actually the agile methodologies support and drive.
I think that's a great point, because you can get very heavy process-oriented, ITIL, whatever it may be, capability maturity, and next thing you know, it's put a stranglehold on kind of innovation, quickening feet.
What's really amazing about that is a lot of those ideas came from Deming in the 60s and turned into total quality management and all that stuff. And then later in life, he was angry at all the codifications of his ideas because the whole point was you can't turn it into a recipe book. And now the same is happening around Agile, where the original people said, well, the whole point is to modify over time. People wrote books, called it things, and now people are stuck on methodologies that are themselves becoming out of date. That's not mine.
You don't want to get exactly in line with the other one.
I know, yes. So, and themselves are getting out of date, and so I think that's a key point, is that as we're looking at how to move into the future and how to organize and how to process, there is no longer a silver bullet end state. There's no jumping between end states. There's only adapting and changing over time, you know. So how does it change, knowing that this change is constant and we have new technologies coming all the time and Apple wasn't there before and they are now, how does it change your relationship with your vendors? Before, we had these very long-term relationships with vendors where we kind of knew them, they knew us, and now there's so many other vendors coming about. How does it change your relationship with them, if at all?
My vendors, it's been bizarre lately. Everybody calls me. I get 100 calls a week from vendors that want to sell me stuff. The people I'm already doing business with, the only time I see them is when they want to do this type of handshake, show me the money type of handshake. And I'm making them jump through much bigger hoops than I did in the past.
What kind of hoops?
It's prove your worth. Prove that there's a real ROI case that I can justify. Otherwise, I don't need you. And we'll do pilot projects. We did a cloud-based pilot solution, $35,000, test it, make sure it works. We want it to work, and pull the plug, just like a VC would pull the plug on a project that's not going to work. Pull the plug if it's not going to work. And we wrote off the 35 grand. Some people in my organization learned some things because some of my junior staff made this recommendation. They were at risk. They took the risk, and it didn't work the way we wanted it to, but they all learned. And so there was value in that money that we spent. It was some cost, but there was real value. So.
I think it's a great way of prototyping. So a lot of, some of these cloud-based vendors and software as a service vendors, they're offering us, sort of a proof of concepts that they can spin up really, really easily. And I won't name the company, but it's MDM kind of device management. And yeah, we'll give you 400 seats to try out. If you like it, you like it. If you don't, you don't. But we know you're going to like it. So it's kind of changed the dynamic as opposed to big ERP where sign here and implement 12 months from now, and it should do what you want it to do.
It should. Don't turn the light switch on and it'll all work away. Angels singing in the background.
Yeah, we have a couple vendors that we actually are doing some different kind of contracting with them, so that we're choosing them and we're piloting with the idea that we are actually going to go into full production, but our contract is written such that we're not giving them any funding until we actually are successful. And we're also considering vendors that we would not have considered before, newer players in the market, much more looking at cloud solutions. And I'd say like the big iron kinds of vendors, they're in trouble now, when you're looking at the Oracles of the world, because there are other vendors who are coming into that path now that are going to offer us more flexible, agile solutions and at much less expense than what we have.
We can talk. I have a good knack of picking companies that can get bought by Oracle or SAP.
Or Microsoft.
Or Microsoft. I just like them, and you're a good judge, I guess.
And whatever you paid them before, you pay 7 times as much.
So, so on to other subjects. I was talking to a really senior IT guy at an entertainment company with a mouse. I won't say who it is. But he was telling me that part of what their sort of IT ritual is they have lunch together. And the topic always comes to the same thing, which is, what would really happen if we just burned it all down, just burn this building of IT down and start it over? Could we just start over and just get rid of it all? So the question for you guys is, what would you do if you had no legacy, if you could just start over? What comes immediately to mind that you would do differently?
Go to marketing?
Touche. It's a tough question.
It is.
I think examining the business processes before you make the technology decisions, because we've taken all of these, we've taken technology and applied it to our old business processes. You know, we're almost 250 years old, so there's a lot of process in that container. And really, you know, well, I was at Brown University and we had 26 payrolls a month. Brown uses Workday now, and they have 1 payroll a month. I mean, I kept saying to them when I was there, why do we have to have so many payrolls? It costs us so much to have this many payrolls. But if you could just sort of stand back, look at what you have to do to achieve your business, and then do that, rather than all these other things that are, they don't seem to add to the long-term value.
From my standpoint, I would, I'd look at the team first. I'd put the right team in place before I bought any technology, make sure I have the right infrastructure from a personnel standpoint. The building's a building, but unless you staff it with the right people, they can't deliver the services that you need to deliver. So you've got to have the right spread of technology folks. And to Steve's point, you can buy a DBA, but I can't buy the right attitude when it comes to supporting clients. I'm a proponent of getting my tech team out of the cubes, out of their office, out of their comfort zone, into other people's office, and share the time with them and listen to their points of pain and try to fix them so that there's a face to it that comes out of the closet. But that's where I spend my money. It's getting the right team in place before I bought anything. Okay.
Well, you could actually just wait and see who complains.
Yeah.
And then start there, right? So it's basically just identify your customer and then identify what value you would do by servicing that customer. And then it's a business. How many customers are like them, right? So if there's a lot of customers like them, you prioritize it. And if there's not a lot of customers like that, then what's the ROI? And then you can decide it from there.
I think you need to reset expectations a bit on budget and investments of IT. We talked about, who was it, Gordon, was it you earlier, Jim over here, about the spend of IT that's occurring outside of IT. And I read somewhere that, by 2016, there'll be more IT spend in marketing than will be in IT. So I think there has to be some realignment on expectations in terms of what IT can get done. I mean, we use a measure of percentage of sales, and it really hasn't changed all that much in the last couple of years, even though we're being asked to do more things. So I think there just has to be sort of a realignment education about, as a company, how much do you want to, what's the value of the investment in technology, how much do you want to do?
What do you think the mission of IT should be then, in the future?
It's delivering innovation. It's continue to deliver innovation and leverage tools that are technical in nature to drive revenue or deliver customer satisfaction. Well, that's what I'm saying.
Can I ask a question? So what if IT is distributed and stuff is done outside IT? Shouldn't we be embracing and supporting that? I know you're talking from a budget point of view, but I mean, it's become part of everybody's job, and the consumerization of technology has been mentioned a whole bunch of times.
But I don't disagree with you. But I think we have a guardianship role, responsibility that we're charged with to kind of safeguard the sort of long-term strategy for the company, both from a architecture and kind of tool standpoint. So that, I mean, if we let everybody go off and do everything, and I don't discourage people from trying to do things. I think it's great as a way to sort of breed great ways of thinking about things and do innovation. But at the same time, we've got to make sure it all fits at the end of the day, that it sort of gets some longevity.
See, I work at somewhere where we let everybody go off and do everything. MIT, that's the nature of the way it
Is
is.
that working good, or?
What's it could do is survey.
It depends on who you ask.
Well, if you're asking the business, right, they want to do all this stuff.
Yeah,
I mean, they want to.
a lot of them do want to do it, but if we ever got into an expense crunch again, like we did in 2008, 2009, and we might, a lot of universities are in there, that is going to come up again.
Right.
It's a tension, but maybe there are things that we need to safeguard. Maybe we ought to look at what we need to safeguard, and maybe some other things we need to sort of empower our users, our customers.
But the trouble is, right? By the time you establish standards, the world has moved on. I mean, and that's the bane of everybody, right? I mean, it's just okay. Yeah, we're going to establish standards around. Okay, get the iPhone 4 working. Okay. because the iPhone 5, mini iPad, it just, on and on and on. There's Yammer, there's, new Facebook thing, there's new, website, there's new, I mean, it's just, but there's not enough time to put the constructs in place.
I have a view on that. If you can start all over again, I think number one, IT should have a seat at the table at the CEO's level. Because in the future, IT shouldn't be the order taker. In the past, what business want, IT delivers. Should turn that around, because technology is going to be such a competitive advantage for all business. It shouldn't be that. It should be reversed. Either you educate all the top executives understand technology, because what they don't know is what's possible.
Yeah, and in my organization, I have a seat at the board and at the C-level with the CEO, and they listen because they realize that there's benefit, real benefit.
Absolutely.
So I agree with that. And to the gals from MIT's point, the only thing I would be concerned about are things where you're at risk, really at risk, like HRS, HR type of issues, HIPAA type of issues, financial type of issues, the PII type of stuff, PCI compliance, those type of things. I think we have to have standards around those core pieces, and the rest of it can be a little bit wild west, but not, at least as long as it fits within your infrastructure. If you build some standards and say, okay, we bought X number of licenses for SQL or Oracle or whatever, you can consume some of those licenses however you want to, and just make sure that it works.
So one thing we haven't talked about is data and stewardship of data, and I do think that that's IT's role, and I think the business wants IT to take that role, but I'm not sure how that's going to, because there's a lot of things happening with data right now.
Yeah, you have to look at the cloud and what safeguard. If you're going to start throwing stuff that's really confidential, is it encrypted at rest, and all these other things that you need to think about. So yeah, there's a little more. You become a CSO or at some level too. So there's some issues. Paul?
Yeah, assuming the culture you were talking about, that technology dollars are becoming wider spread outside of IT. So assuming your culture was a more centralized culture, what's the reason that is happening? Is it that IT is not able to service them to the levels they need, or?
Well, for my organization, it's because we try to empower those groups to come to us with solutions that we can implement based on things that they're comfortable with, whether it's the iPad, the iPhone. Hey, we've got this great new iPad app. Well, I have somebody that's an advocate in the technology group that's we call her the MDM, or our mobile device manager. Yes, we have a software mobile device manager, but we have somebody that's in charge of aggregating our portfolio of approved type of products, vetting them, coming up with shortcuts, those type of things, and then submitting or emailing a blast out that these are some of the things that are available, things that we can do. This is, oh, by the way, this is in our approved portfolio of products that we're supporting. So.
I think it's yes, though. I mean, they are going off on their own because they can't secure resources yet, as we are working on 1,000 other things, and unfortunately, the priority for whatever they may want to be doing is just not a priority for us. Which goes back to a little bit of your point, which is people need to be educated. I mean, one of our, I think, accomplishments has been making sure all the executives are aligned around the priorities that we are focused on and why we're not focusing on other things.
But educated, we've got to be, IT has got to, when we say educated, we're really talking brainwashed, because we want to talk like us, right? There's a real, because the real politics of this, in a rare moment of reality, in truth to power here, if you will, is like because of the cloud, because of the economics of like basically providing computational functionality right now, if you say no, they're going to be like children going to another parent. They're going to go do what they want to do. And so, like, and because it's what type of cop do you want to be? I mean, we're playing, somehow we got labeled as parents in this whole thing, all right? Versus an exciting innovator. And the only person, and our best friend is a CIO these days, is the corporate counsel, which totally sucks. We're practicing the Nancy Reagan School of Technology Management, which is just say no type of stuff, because whereas Ralph Laura, who's the CIO at Clorox, 100-year-old outfit, just coming out of it, he had, shadow IT, and it's very interesting how people react to shadow IT badly. He doesn't call it shadow IT, he's relabeled it as shallow IT. Because they're actually doing innovation for him. And what he's trying to do is, come to me and tell me what you're doing. Because if you're the cop and going to put him in jail and spank him, then they're just going to hide from you. And it becomes that much different, you know, you say, and you can also agree to disagree, but you basically say like, at least you know what's going on, and like you can actually, you don't have to be the bad cop, that would be the lawyer's job type of thing. You see what I'm saying? And I know we're out of that, so he actually uses those people, you know, like we all used to use power users. It's like we brought them into our tent. They actually were doing our innovation for us, because it's on their dime, they're gonna be doing it anyway.
Right, that's what we're doing at Dartmouth, and I don't know if this is applicable in the corporate environment, but,
We're talking to the mic.
okay, in the corporate environment, but we have all these pods of people out working with faculty and students, and then they're loosely connected, so that, you know, what scientists need, big data, that does translate actually over into the arts and humanities people, because they're starting to work with big data also. And so how we deal with that, the arts and humanities people, very media, very video oriented, scientists need that also when we're talking about visualization. Engineering builds everything themselves, but we learn from that, and business school buys it all off the shelf, right? And we learn from them too. And so we're loosely coupled, and you know, having an organization that can, you know, share this information back and forth within our group, and then central IT not always being the one who knows best. We're trying to push that out.
Just to add, I mean, we're not in the business of saying that. I say we're in the business of saying yes. I say, you know, how we can do something versus why we can't do something. What I was saying earlier, though, it's about building that sort of consensus at that executive level about why we're doing certain things and not. So I don't, you know, I have not that I don't have a stake. I have a stake in the performance of the company, but if we want to do more things, that's great. I can secure more people and resources, and I can do more.
But another thing is, I think we're afraid to lead in IT. I mean, we're allowed to say no. Somehow, you know, because I mean, we're running the world's largest phone sex ring. Sure, you can have that. You can have it. What do you want? What do you want to do? PDA? I mean, there's some things where you're bad. I mean, you got to focus on the enterprise purpose, right? And basically say no. I mean, excuse me, which McFly? You can't do that, and you're going to go to jail. What number is that?
Quick audience survey. How many people here think, raise your hand if you think IT should be decentralized into the business? There's one back there. There's a couple. That's very few. How many people think that you should outsource?
What does that mean?
In other words, that IT should be embedded and report, and it's okay for the business side to do some of their own IT.
What area of the business?
Different areas.
So a fragmented IT group scattered
Exactly.
across marketing, sales, whatever.
Yeah. Well, in a sense, they're doing that already.
To a certain degree.
They're buying cloud apps, and I'm not advocating.
Not my
just-
organization, because they can come to.
You're saying that-
They can come to the table with a solution, but any IT dollar runs through me.
You're saying that they don't, you know about all the cloud apps they're using, and they're not using any.
If it requires any financial commitment from the organization, because they have no IT dollars. All the IT dollars come through me, and the board, and the executive director. So, I have these guys out there that are prototyping what they'd like to do before it comes to real dollar, and say, okay, this is a solution that's going to work, this is why I think it's going to work. And then they say, can we do it? And I say, yes or no. It will work because, you know, the data is encrypted, or, you know, it doesn't breach our firewall, those type of things. And I may say no because we don't have another $100,000 or $200,000 this year. Let's get it in the pipeline for next year.
How do you prevent them from using, like, Box, for example, where maybe the internal file solution doesn't allow external sharing, so they just use Box?
Well, Box is a bad word, because that was my failed implementation. And would not work through our firewall the way it was supposed to work. So we implemented it, we pulled the trigger, tried to get it to work the way we wanted it to work, and then pulled it back. And now we have another solution.
Good question.
Why couldn't you offer Box as a service? I think the very first speaker talked about project management and tools and file sharing and other things offered as a service. A lot of universities we're working on it, but we're behind. A lot of universities are already offering a file sharing service, document management service. We just implemented Drupal Cloud so they could build their own website. So when you say IT in the business, that doesn't mean IT's in the business. It means that IT's consumerizing and getting easier to use, and we're supporting services that allow the business to do it. So I don't know why.
That's correct, that's what we're doing.
Yeah.
Here's our cloud solution, it works however you want to use it for your business perspective or business unit, do it. We implemented BaseCamp just so that we had a global project management system that worked. Oh, by the way, now we distribute all of our board reports via BaseCamp. I don't print the 700 pages that we used to print every month. Everybody's got the latest version, and the board members come to the board with an iPad that we provide, with a suite of applications, including Docs to go, all those type of things. They can mark it up, come here, ask their questions, say, this is what we need to do. I see that we'll go to DocuSign to do board books at some point.
Just a comment, do we really believe that you can control what people do with IT by controlling the IT budget? You know, I learned how to beat that 30 years ago. It's a lot easier.
Yeah,
when
I'm
we're
a small
talking
group.
about
I'm a small group.
Office supplies.
Was
code word for, shadow IT.
Well, that's a consultant.
An engineering part of an engineering investment. I'm not sure you can control that.
Yeah, we're so small that it's pretty easy to keep the finger on the pulse. So we have 300 full-time employees, and I have four facilities, and 42 IT, folks. So I mean, that's what we're in the business of delivering IT to the conventions. And so it's a really dynamic group, and we're pretty open. If somebody needs something, come to me. But that's a mindset. That's not somebody trying to go around me. We've built the street credibility that we're going to facilitate change, and we've delivered on it, and so we can be an advocate for something that you want to do instead of being somebody that says no.
So you've sort of perceptually won that battle that Michael was talking about. I mean, you've labeled yourself
Absolutely.
as, I'm not part of the problem, I'm here to help you out, I'm here to make sure we can make this thing happen, versus, that's where the ideas go to die.
I talked to my PR, go ahead, I talk about myself, but I talked to my PR folks to say, how do we get this technology message out that we implemented this and it means X, Y, and Z? So they realize that it's been that communication piece.
But it's also going back to what Paul was saying in his talk, is telling the value story. I mean, we are chronically, tragically underspending on IT now. There are so many, I mean, if you track classic, wonderful business school at Dartmouth, basically, it is a busy, positive net present value project should be funded, right? And so everything you're looking at in that pipeline is a positive net present value. But like somehow we're out of money. We're not. We should actually go and spend this money and create the value. But we're so busy saying, no, we're out of money, because that's the number.
Absolutely, and it's to Michael's point, if you spend it at that top of line, it's 20% easier to do that.
We'll typically make an investment, anything that has a positive ROI, we will, positive ROI, in a certain defined time period that we'll make the investments in. What we find a lot of the challenge, though, is that the business doesn't really have the attention, kind of the overall attention span to focus on the vast number of efforts. They become diluted because they realize they need to put up sort of,
Their capacity to change.
They don't have the capacity.
Exactly.
So we might say, hey, let's do this. Well, what we do, 15 other things we need to work on.
I think you're going to see it's going to segment, and you're right, I spent my whole career doing whatever I want to do, right? I'll just figure out how to do it. And it's much easier with SaaS applications because now I can use OpEx dollars, not CapEx. So you really can't, unless you're going to block the firewall, and I know how to get around that, it's not that hard. Right? I can run any SaaS app I want, and it's a low enough dollar charge a month. It's probably high if you do it cumulatively, then I can do it, but I think it's simpler. You have to look at global scope projects that have interdepartment issues or have external visibility, and then you have to look at local scope projects. Because there's zero chance you could do a Salesforce.com implementation if you didn't also integrate that with your customer support system, and you didn't integrate that with your lead gen on the top end. So you'd have Eloqua or something feeding your lead gen through your website that would tie into Salesforce, that would tie into, so that's all got to be stitched together, and so you can't do that as a local scope project. But if I'm a development manager and I want to go use whatever, security project to check my code, or source control management, or spin up a bunch of EC2 instances in the cloud, there's no value in stopping me, and I'm not really causing any issues for the company. So you have to understand global scope and governance versus local scope and getting their job done. And once you make that partition, I think it's easier. But there is a difference.
But,
Only one thing I just say about that is, I don't disagree, and I don't disagree because I really like to encourage sort of people doing their own thing and trying things and being really interested in technology, and then you quit tomorrow, then you walk out though.
Yeah, but it won't be me, it'll be the organization, so you have to make sure that.
Well, I'm saying, you
it's
said,
stable.
you said a developer, you have a developer, I'm gonna go out, I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna do this tool, and then
Yeah, but
you
they're
leave.
not gonna, it's not gonna be done in an island. Who's ever running that engineering group is gonna know this is happening. Because eventually someone has to prove off on that OpEx. It can't, unless you're putting it on your own personal credit card, and then you're trying to expense it through, which is not gonna happen, right? Someone's gonna see it and know it, and so someone's gonna buy it. It's never one rogue person who's, well, maybe it is, but I've never seen it as one rogue person that the minute they walk out, the department falls apart, right? Because if nothing else, unless somebody else, they'll tell somebody else they're doing it, they'll think it's cool. But you have to have somebody sign off on the credit card expense, and they're gonna ask what it is. So it's not, you can't be completely secret, you can be pretty close. And the department will know.
I had a question over.
Yeah.
Well, one of the issues, and I'm going to try to grapple with, is the structure issue, the leadership issue, because it's across all areas now. And if the IT leadership isn't connecting with the rest of the leadership, opportunities are being missed. Even though you may say we'll control the dollar spent, but we don't, even what's not being raised or not being thought of in those areas. And I see more institutions going to unique structures with IT leadership bleeding into areas you wouldn't have seen before. Have any of you grappled with that?
Well, I think I also said that I spent a lot more time with the business units trying to figure out what their points of pain are before I even look at, controlling dollars spent. So really getting out and seeing what's going on operationally is that's my crystal ball as to what the needs are.
I see people making quick decisions because of dollars when long-term decisions with more dollars will have a bigger payoff for the organization. But they're looking at their own thing and they're getting confined to dollars. And it's a challenge for all of us, but it's really getting the different units to understand their responsibility for innovation, let's not call it IT, in their workplace. It's just one point of view.
We get dragged into conversations more around process improvement than anything, and really understanding again how all these pieces interplay between divisions, departments, process, what have you.
I just want to get back to your, burn the place down and start again, because that's essentially where we are. And, I think that's the 3 or 4 things that are important. One is, it's really not IT anymore. So, we're calling ourselves processes, engineering, and technology. Processes first, because they drive everything, right? And the handoff between processes is what matters, right? Number 2 is you're going to get a handle on what's core and what's contextual, right? And this is pretty basic. The HPS has been talking about this for years. But if you're doing a greenfield, that's what you worry about, right? What's core, what's contextual? If it's contextual, don't do it, right? And you're not going to do it, that brings up item number 3, which is, as a tech unit, you're going to have to get really good at gluing things together. So you pick a technology, you're going to get really good at gluing things together and make sure that's the only thing you use. And you glue everything together as fast as possible, right? And, sometimes you throw it away, sometimes you don't. But, I don't think it's that complicated.
Agree or disagree?
Agree.
Sort of agree, it seems.
I think agree. I think everybody needs to understand and buy into that strategy, not just
Well,
not
it
just
was a
IT.
management committee decision.
I mean, just everybody's kind of buying the new way of doing things.
So some more audience questions. How many people think that you guys, that email should be in-house versus outsourced?
What does the hand up mean?
Outsourced as in let someone else run your email. There's one there. A couple here. Not many. Raise your hand if you think it should be outsourced. That's a lot. What about HR?
All of it. Yes.
Really? Nobody agrees. Files outsourced? Payroll?
You'll get rewarded by that.
No? Finance?
You asked about outsourcing. I really think, though, is there an ROI? If there really isn't truly an ROI, are you just going to put it out there to do that? Or are you going to expect to drive the savings of the company?
It's not always about savings.
Thank you.
It's just not always about savings. It's about management bandwidth. Right? I mean, if we're going to take on finance and, rolling into GL, the amount of distraction you get from doing that versus working on something that's core, it's pretty pricey. The opportunity cost is very high.
Yeah. Are we looking at this too broadly? Because we listen a lot about the consumerism of IT. And if you take a look at how an organization is structured, at some point in time, the CEO approved the purchasing of the pens and the pencils and the papers. Are we now, there are so many things that are IT related that are really just consumer products that you buy off the shelf, and you don't need IT involved in it. Should IT's vision, so to speak, be from a holistic approach to the company on the big stuff? The little stuff is left down to the office manager or whomever needs it, because it affects that individual's productivity, and they're getting the things. It comes down to the accountability of that individual buying the product and using that product so that they do their job better, so that you get rid of the minutia of the day with all those little items, and IT is focused on the big stuff. The stuff that's going to matter in the long run, that's going to be the home runs for the company, whereas the little stuff is by the manager who's held accountable for the productivity of his department.
So that may actually be what saves Best Buy, if you will. I mean, so like, you actually bring Best Buy inside your corporate environment, and just give them what they want.
Yeah.
Exactly.
You know, I mean, because the Disney is actually doing that. They are putting kiosks in, you know, have you been to the airports where they, they have the technology stuff? You go, what's going on there, right? Disney says that's the way people are consuming it. So for all the stuff that they've got on their approved list, which is basically 10,000 items long, right? They're just putting kiosks around the building, right? If you need a keyboard, you need this, you need that, just push the button and you get it. So
For the first time the other day, I saw something back from that Most Best Buy.
We have one of those, actually, we have a computer store, it closes at, 5 or 6 o'clock at night, but all of the most popular things they can buy out of the vending machine.
It's 3 o'clock in the morning in the dark. We used to go out drinking at that time, but now you go out and get a computer. Things have changed. We've gone digital.
Well, someone
I think
has
you're
a
right, though.
follow-up. You take sort of the easy stuff off the table. What are some of the more innovative things that you are all doing in your organization?
BYOD, cloud apps, cloud storage. We're leveraging video conferencing, we're leveraging Skype. Just sort of, we look at things, and we also in IT fund sort of innovation as well, and that sounds kind of silly, but we do ensure that we carve out time for people to spend on projects like, okay, so new iPad's coming out, okay, somebody run down, grab a couple of them, and we'll go from there and figure out how we want to use it. It's a little bit of structure to it. It's not just, do whatever you want, but at the same time, come back in 6 weeks, 8 weeks, and also know what you found. So we try to stay on top of, as best we can, stay on top of recent trends and what have you, taking a look at things.
I'm finding a couple of interesting things happening. I never had to really concern myself with the RF spectrum, but I have 3 convention centers. You put 75,000 devices in 3 convention centers, and they're all running 3G, 4G, LTE, and Wi-Fi at the same time, and some people are carrying a couple of devices. I'm looking for somebody to join the IT team that's an RF type of engineer that can say, how do we do this better without causing more interference, and what infrastructure do we put in place? But I'm also, and that's the ultimate BYOD, when you have 25,000 people bringing whatever they have in. But from a back-of-house standpoint, BYOD didn't work for my employees because a lot of them are union guys. We developed our interface to our core enterprise system in iOS, so we can deploy electrician plumbers with their iPhones. They can close out work orders, do those types of things. So we have a very, we didn't have to migrate to Android and everything else. We established one platform with one screen or a couple of screen resolutions that we had to work for and work with instead of 300 with the Android. So we're doing that. We're saving people that round trip back to their desk, and that's a big deal in a building that's 1.7 million square feet. That's a big place to walk back to your desk and get your next work order. So those are some of the things. BYOD works for our clients, but it doesn't work for our back-house staff, which I can't mandate. You have to have an iPhone, you have to have an iPad, or an Android, whatever those things are.
So I'm on the infrastructure side, right? And so the infrastructure vendors have to be better about not just servicing IT, but also starting to make their products better for end users. So help IT enable end users in secure ways. So I'm in the data space, and so really what's got to happen is end users have to, under the control of IT, so I am not completely out on the edge, under the control or watching list of IT have to be able to do their own provisioning, make sure their own backups are happening, do their own cleanup, do their own restores. They need to get more involved in managing their own data like they do in the cloud, but under the ownership of IT and the protection of the IT governance with their own sort of minimal credentials. So what you're going to see is a whole new set of products where the CIO is actually going to be much like what Box does, but under the control of the CIO, be able to manage how data moves within the organization and how applications get run from the organization. It makes it more of a much self-user portal kind of a discovery thing, and basically helps the IT people still be able to, in the case of data, you lose it, you're gone, right? It's persistent, it's legal, right? You lose somebody's social security number in the state of Massachusetts and notices go out, nothing good happens, right? And that happens to everybody who's sending, I'm getting you go ahead and you sign up for something and you put in personal information, and I've got it, I don't even want it, right? And lots of people have it, it is in HR and it is in finance, right? And so there's also copyright and IP information that you don't want floating around. So I think you're going to see a whole new set of products that help CIOs and IT people enable their end users in different ways that wasn't necessarily our thought before. So not only are your customers changing, our customers are changing.
I think it has to be super easy though.
Yeah, it has to be.
I
It has to be- it has to be-
backups for stores and all that, they expect to have something running and it works.
Yep.
Right? And that's the beauty of, the Apple line of products and all that it just works, it's easy, but it's very close, it's a very closed system at the same time. Right? So,
It has to be as easy as the stuff that's out of the cloud today.
absolutely.
That's consumer.
So in higher ed,